Welcome to season 7 of Sal Silvester on the Future of Leadership. I am Sal Silvester, your host and executive producer. Great to be with you. As you probably already know, season 7 is focused on elevating human performance at work. We're exploring what leaders can do to help themselves and others improve their performance at work, just like an athlete would. An athlete trains for events using tried and tested methods to enhance their performance. Why don't we think about ourselves as corporate athletes and do the same? So today we're focusing on improving performance when it comes to our own wellness. And my special guest today is Jan Jenkins. Jan's been on the show. Previously, we had a great and very powerful episode on the topic of resilience. You should check that out. It was amazing and vulnerable conversation. Jan is an incredible executive coach on our team, and with her own business, she has endless energy, and part of her specialty is around coaching female executives. So today we're going to be exploring this topic of executive wellness. You'll hear us talk about mental overload, mental fitness, burnout, and then some strategies to build sustainable executive wellness habits. Let's go to the interview with Jan now. Jan, great to have you back on the show, our third episode together.
Yes, thank you for inviting me, Sal. I appreciate it.
Awesome. It's so good to be with you today. I'm excited about this topic where we'll be exploring this idea of executive wellness, and inevitably for you and I as executive coaches, like this theme of wellness comes up, whether it comes up by the client or whether we just notice something physically or emotionally in our clients. Why are you so passionate about executive wellness?
You know, that's really a great question. I know that for both of us, we've been coaching leaders for many years, and we are intimately involved in wanting to see them succeed. And time and again, when they haven't succeeded, I've noticed it's because very often it comes back to they're not taking care of themselves in a way to support their health, which derails and undermines everything. So it started out with, wow, this is what's necessary. And when that falls apart, executives are going to, performance is going to suffer tremendously. I've loved nature. Our family's always been involved in sports. It's been just a part of who we are. And just shortly before my husband retired, a few years back, I saw that Dr. Mark Hyman was sponsoring the Feel Good Summit, which it was fabulous. It was held in LA in this beautiful resort area. And Dr. Mark Hyman, I have been following for many years. He is 5 times New York Times bestselling author. He's written that many books. He is also the international leader in functional medicine. There were, at the Feel Good Summit, there were top functional medicine docs from around the planet. And he's a board president of clinical affairs for the Institute of Functional Medicine and founder and senior advisor for the functional medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. And when you have those titles and those accolades behind you, I can also say that in speaking to him, we spoke with him personally. What an amazing man. What a loving, giving, amazing human being. And, that we thought, it's a great way to start this next chapter of our life. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't have health, we don't have anything. Yeah. We want to travel. We want to do all sorts of things, and we have. But I'm watching people a lot younger than me fall by the wayside. And it's like, I don't want to go there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, Jan. I think, similar on my side as a guy in his 50s with 2 young kids, it's super important to me. It's been a much bigger focus for me in terms of how can I take care of myself? How can I be healthy so that I'm here? I've got a nice lifespan and health span, but also I've just been getting intrigued with what you started with, which is the connection with performance at work. And an athlete takes care of themselves in certain ways. Why wouldn't we think about ourselves as corporate athletes and take care of ourselves in certain ways? And we can't ignore the connection between performance at work and the way in which we take care of ourselves, our executive wellness.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we are one person, and how we show up at home and how we show up at work, it all comes together. These are not
Hmm.
separate entities.
Yep, for sure. When you think about executive wellness, Jen, what are some of the things that come to mind for you?
I really think of a holistic approach to health and performance that would include physical, mental, social, lifestyle aspects. I mean,
Hmm.
it's a way for leaders literally to thrive in all areas of their life. Um, just very briefly, because I know we'll get more into this later, but I like to think of mental fitness, speaking of fitness,
Yeah.
and it's all about keeping your brain and emotional health in top shape. I mean, there's no way that we can function at the high level that executives are expected to function at if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, I've lived in Colorado now, Sal, for 10 years. And one thing that amazes me is seeing cars on the side of the road with this orange flag. And they'll sit there sometimes for days. Well, obviously that car clunked and it needs to be hauled off. And that's exactly what happens if we're not paying attention to the very person who is that leader or that parent
Mhm.
or that community, advisor in whatever form. So mental fitness is key. It includes all sorts of things like emotional balance, flexibility, creativity, but it's key. Movement. I like that word versus exercise because when you say exercise, people start freaking out about, an hour cardio, kill myself at the gym. And when we get onto exercise, or when we get onto that point, there's some new research that shows less is more. It is fascinating, and I love it, and I'm following it.
Mm. You know, it's
So,
funny, Jan.
yeah.
This morning, I had kind of a tough day yesterday. Didn't sleep great last night, and then I got up early. I had a very early call with some of our software developers in India, and then your email came through with some of the points that you wanted to cover, and I saw that movement one, and I'm like, wait a minute, why am I just sitting right now? I need to get up and move, and so I got up and did just a quick 20-minute yoga and like my whole physiology and how I felt was completely different.
Even 2 or 3 minutes, just getting the body moving. And on days when I'm on the screen a lot, I know what I need to pay attention to is stopping at least once an hour and, maybe do some yoga poses, maybe do some
Yep.
neck stretches, some back stretches. Sal, I know that you often are you have a raised desk and you stand up.
Yes.
Tell me about that and how you like it.
Yeah, and I'm sitting down as you ask me that question. So maybe I'll stand up. I'm going to raise it right now if you can see the video. I do like it. For me, like I have to be changing my body position a lot, especially if I'm spending a couple of days at a time in my office. And oftentimes you and I are on planes or we're traveling, seeing clients, but I try to move a lot during the day. In between calls, I'll walk around the building, or I just ran into a friend outside. I was eating my lunch while walking outside. So the standing desk just helps, back to your point on movement, just helps me change my physiological state.
Well, and the thing we need to remember, we can't separate these different elements because mind, body, spirit, they all work together.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
all work together.
Yeah.
I would also add to that in thinking of executive wellness, it's about eating whole, real food
Hmm.
versus packaged.
Yep.
It's about nutritious food. It's that car that's stuck on the side of the freeway in Colorado that's been abandoned because it won't go anymore. It hasn't had what it needs to run, much less run
Yes.
at optimal performance.
Yep. Absolutely.
I know that you did a podcast. In fact, I think your last one was with a gentleman who spoke about sleep and the critical nature of sleep.
Hmm.
Well, when you consider that sleep literally rewires our brains, it literally cleans out the gunk, organizes. We are just, I think, in the infancy of realizing the impact. And in fact, I just was listening to a podcast by Dr. Hyman this morning. He was interviewing a top sleep specialist, and he said in the US, and this is true across the board, but especially for leaders, people have moved from what we used to get like 8.5 hours sleep. Not too many even get 6 anymore. About 6 or a little bit more is the norm. And then think about that old bravado myth of, oh, I only sleep 3 or 4 hours a night. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I've only known in my entire life maybe 5 people who can do that.
Yeah.
So it's a critical piece of moving us forward.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the out hustle culture is a myth in terms of performance. Yeah, you can do it. Of course you can. There are some implications to that, but I don't think people perform at their best. And it's very personalized. I do know of one person who is able to operate on very low amounts of sleep, but literally it's one person. So for me, I know that at a minimum I need 7.5 hours. I try to get lights out by 9:30 so that lights are on at 5 a.m. or 5:30. But if I don't get that, I can feel my performance deteriorating the next day every time.
Yep, it really makes a difference. And then
Hmm.
there's people like me who tend to be more on the hyperactive side. And so I have to focus on what do I need to do to wind down and
There you go.
sleep well. I
Nice.
have to work at getting a good night's sleep. So um, anyway, all of this comes into creating that person that we want to be. How do we want to show up as a leader? How do we want to show up as a parent? I mean, it's not going to happen if we aren't paying attention to number one. No one else can do this for us.
Yeah. So I think, kind of couple of points here. Why, number one, there's a direct connection to performance at work. And number two, you think about executive wellness really very holistically, from mental fitness to movement to how we eat or what we eat, how we sleep, spiritual connection and social health. I'm imagining that's probably in there for you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you think that for many people, their purpose and meaning in life is connected to their job, that gives them a lot of satisfaction in their life. Well, when that starts falling apart, you start falling apart on a number of different levels.
That's a very good point. I think this is it's a very important point. I've also heard that for men, this is even a bigger issue, and maybe in a very traditional household where the man is focused on work, working long hours for long periods of time, and then all of a sudden they get to retirement and they realize they actually don't have any they don't have any social connections outside of work. So we all have to pay attention to that because from the research I've seen, the quality of our social connections is the number one predictor of both physical and mental health. But for the guys out there and this includes me, um, building those relationships now matters so that you have relationships outside of the workplace.
Oh, yeah. And I can really speak to that because my husband Steve and I have been in Colorado for 10 years, and our connections, our network, all his golfing buddies, whatever. I mean, it was in the Twin Cities area. So
Mm,
and when you really think of where do you meet people? Kids and dogs.
right. Kids and dogs. That's exactly right. Our set of friends right now revolves around my kids for sure. Jan,
Yeah,
let's
some of
talk.
my best friends were created sitting on bleachers watching kids play sports, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let's talk a bit about we'll edit that out. Jan, let's talk a bit about mental overload. The executives we work with are sort of in this constant state of high cognitive demand. What contributes to mental overload, and what are some thoughts that you have on how people can address it?
It's a great question because I think I've just noticed over the years that the expectations just keep getting higher and higher. And so, in the midst of all of that, one thing we used to talk about time management. I really think it's more about managing priorities than
Hmm.
managing time. Because
Yeah.
if you're managing priorities, you're not getting stuck down in the weeds that is pulling people from what they should be how they should be spending their time. There's just so much that's expected of leaders. I mean, especially executives, that people in the organization look up to you for guidance, for inspiration, for motivation, for help in solving problems. You couple that with tight deadlines, long hours, shareholder responsibilities, competition. I mean, there's just a lot that is pressing on individuals, and that's just in the work environment. If you've also got things going on at home, in other aspects of your life, that multiplies because that's all taking a toll. It's stressful. I think one of the key things is you just mentioned it, maintaining strong relationships. And when we have conflicts or misunderstandings, one of the key things we can do is to take care of it as soon as possible, deal with it, address it, think it through, come up with a way of approaching it and deal with
Hmm.
it. Because if we don't, what happens is we sit and ruminate again and again and again on those thoughts. And when that happens, we dive into a negative spiral. And what happens then, our bodies, our brains don't know the difference between something actually occurring or we're visualizing it or thinking about it. So all of those stress hormones are being sent through the body, which has disastrous impacts, many of which we don't even know for years.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think the key word here around this mental overload is the overload piece, and or the buildup of emotions, and then all of a sudden a whole bunch of uh, there's a whole bunch of impacts to our body, to how we think, to our brains, to our overall being. It can ultimately lead, I think, to burnout.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely, which is a critical situation. It's interesting you mentioned that. I had a coaching call just this week with a top executive, and in questioning him, he all of a sudden sat back and said to me, he said, Jan, um, if I keep this up, I won't be around at 60 or 65. I'll be dead.
Hmm.
I let
Wow.
that sit for a minute and I said, did you hear what you just said? And the question I had asked was, what if you don't? What if you don't change course here? What will happen? And the answer was so quick. Wow is right.
Yeah. Yeah, wow is right. So many of our clients are very successful career-wise, financially, but they're not successful on the health front, on the family front. There are implications. And I think for all of us to really broaden our definition of what success means is important. So I want to shift a bit here to more around two things, Jen. So let's say we're on that track to burnout. Um, what are some prevention strategies that we can get into? And then we'll get into maybe more proactive strategies. But if you're on this road to mental overload, if you're on this road with, there's a lot of emotional buildup, what are some prevention strategies to recover from that so that you don't actually hit that burnout?
Right. I think one of the really important things to do is pay attention, have self-awareness, because the signs are there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are physical signs. We get headaches. We start not sleeping very well. We get digestive problems. Changes in appetite or sleep are really big ones. Emotionally, we start to feel more negative, more cynical. We find ourselves losing motivation, losing our way, so to speak.
Yep.
Behaviorally, it always results in reduced performance, even in everyday tasks. A sense of withdrawing. I mean, things that used to give us joy don't bring us joy anymore. So when that starts happening, we need to have our antennas up and say, whoa, because if we don't pay attention and watch it, it then becomes chronic. And when it
Yes.
becomes chronic, we've now entered a stage of burnout that can be extremely debilitating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the signs are there. A sign that I'll notice in myself is I will be reacting to something that happens probably from work as I'm interacting with my kid, and I'm responding in a short way or frustrated way to my kid. And it actually has nothing to do with my child. It has everything to do with the other stuff that's going on. And so that self-awareness piece is important. So you're saying, look, there's physical cues. What are you feeling? Where are you feeling it in your body? There's also mental and emotional cues. We got to pay attention to that so that we can look, all truth, all progress begins with the truth. So we got to start with the truth and the self-awareness.
Yeah. And I don't know of a way better than deep breathing. And I
Mm-hmm.
am so fascinated with this topic. This goes all the way back to college. My favorite course was exercise physiology, go figure, because I began to understand the bigger impact of it. So the most important thing we can do is slow down our breathing. Sit back, slowly inhale through the nose and slowly exhale through the mouth. It will do more in 30 seconds of slow breathing to physiologically slow the body down. It tells the stress hormones to chill. It tells the amygdala to turn off. We're not in being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so be aware and stop, pause. And when you pause, just start immediately deep breathing.
Yeah.
There's one other, it's so simple. And I've taught this to so many leaders and they love it because no one knows they're doing it. I mean, it, the story goes back, actually, our granddaughter played softball in high school and her team was really bummed out because they were playing this really tough team. And I just saw their faces and I walked over to the dugout. I said, hey, and our granddaughter looks at me like, oh no, what's going to happen now? And I just said, I want you to try something. So, okay, fine. Go ahead. Anyone listening to this podcast, and Sal, go ahead and try this. Just put your tongue on the roof of your mouth for about 15, 20 seconds and start some deep breathing. Actually, it doesn't even take 15 to 20 seconds to
Mm-hmm.
notice a change, does it? What happened?
Did you notice my face drop?
Yes.
Like that was the first thing that I noticed physically was just all the muscles in my face just began to relax.
You know what? Your shoulders did.
Ah, they did too. Interesting. Yeah. Well, it's a great, just simple grounding technique, right? Like maybe you're getting ready to present at an all hands meeting or you've got an important board meeting. Like just find a little bit of space to lower that tension, to pay attention, and then to start with the breathing.
And there's a whole scientific reasoning behind it, which I did not memorize anyway. But the point being, when you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, it has an amazing calming effect on the body. So if you do that and do some deep breathing, the tongue on the roof of the mouth is a big deal. Just one of the quick tips I learned. And how simple is
Awesome.
that?
Yeah, I love it. Jan, let's talk about sustainable executive wellness habits. So given, all of the things we've talked about that impact a leader, and the mental overload, the burnout, et cetera, the emotional buildup, what are some sustainable strategies? And if we could start today, the small but impactful ones, where do people start?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that we are we are wired. We are wired to connect. We are wired to, I believe, want to do good in the world. And in order to do that, we have to recognize that we need to take care of ourselves. Self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And so when I look at all these different areas that I briefly mentioned earlier, mental fitness, emotions and stress, what are the things you can do? Now you can do things in the moment, like just gave a quick example. In the long haul, though, what you want to be focusing on is setting up some habits and some routines that literally train your body that you don't have to be in this hyper vigilant state all the time. You can operate amazingly well as a successful executive and be the eye in the midst of the hurricane, be the calm in the middle of the storm. You can't do that, though, without practice. So it's about having some things that you do on a daily basis. It doesn't matter if it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, once or twice a day. The point is, you're training your body, just like you mentioned earlier, just like an athlete would train. You're training your body to operate in a calmer state, which brings you clarity, presence, and ultimately performance. There are so many mindfulness techniques out there. Meditating, visualization. Visualization is one that I have kind of picked up again. I used it years ago, and I don't know why I ever kind of dropped it. But again, the brain does not know if something is actually happening or not. The thoughts that go through our mind and the pictures, visualization that we do, if we're visualizing what we want, we're creating a state of being that is moving in that direction. And that's why, whether it's positive or negative, what we focus on increases. One of the techniques that it's been around for, oh gosh, at least 2 decades, maybe more, and I know you're smiling already, is tapping. I have been tapping for 7 or 8 years. I follow, in fact, I would recommend this to anyone. Hop on the Tapping Solution. The founder is Nick Ortner. He now, his sister Jessica and his brother Alex are also part of his organization. The research that shows, because what tapping does, you're tapping on the meridian points, and the meridian points are the same points on the body that if you went in for acupuncture or acupressure, that they would put needles in, most likely, because they are energy centers in the body. So it gets the energy flowing. And then you're also visualizing, and you're also saying something out loud. So you've got mind, body, spirit working towards what you want. One of the reasons I love watching executives hop onto this, they have a 10-day free trial period. They've got a beautiful app. Men and women are doing this with their kids. There are tapping sessions on there for 3 to 5 year olds, for 6 to 8 year olds, 10 to 12 year olds, teenagers. It's an incredibly effective technique. The when I first got the app, gosh, it probably came out 5 years ago. There were maybe only a few sessions. There's like over 700. You name it. I don't care if it's depression, anxiety, you name it, it's on there. But to me, it's one of the most powerful things that I have come across because it's mind, body, spirit. You're in 10 minutes time or 5 minutes time, you're tapping into all of it,
Hmm.
literally tapping into
Yeah,
all of it.
right, right.
It's all coming about. So another one that I think we absolutely cannot forget is gratitude and self-compassion. Gratitude rewires your brain. I have been using a journal. It's called the 5 Minute Journal. It's Intelligent Change comes out with all sorts of really interesting products. They have a 5 minute journal. I actually send this to people I'm coaching because it's 5 minutes, 2.5 minutes in the morning, 2.5 minutes at night. But you set up the day with what you're grateful for, what you're going to focus on, and you end the day with, what are 3 amazing things that happened today? And maybe one thing that I do differently, but it's programming the mind, and the gratitude piece is huge. Self-compassion, self-love is another one. We tend to be this is really true of high performers, and I have found this in executives again and again. The top performers are so self-critical, and versus being self-critical, we can't hate ourselves effective. We can't hate ourselves thin. We can't hate ourselves happy. Go figure.
Right.
Working on that aspect, I think, is a key factor.
Nice.
You spoke earlier, Sal, about movement. My number one thing there is do what you love.
Hmm.
If you hate going to the gym, why do it? I mean, there's so many things you can do. Walking on a beautiful day. But just get your body moving. And one of the keys that I'm learning from more and more from the experts is stretch. Stretch throughout the day because it keeps the energy flowing. It releases some of that stuck energy when we get tense and tight
Yeah.
and ruminate on the things that have gone wrong. I wanted to mention quickly one of the changes, the shifts in weight loss is less is more. I've been following John Gabriel because he does a lot of visualization, and it's never, if it's just about weight loss, it's not going to work. He's got a bigger picture. It's a very holistic picture, but he's got this concept of get thin or be eaten. And what it is visualize, is exercising in sprints. 20 minutes of walking with some sprints in there when you're going all out for 10 seconds is training your body to want to be thin, to want to be healthy, because it goes back to our bodies try and hang on to fat to protect us. It goes all the way back to how our brains are wired and being chased. So if we're visualizing ourselves being chased or chasing what we want, either way, the impact from the burst of energy and the visualization is helping people literally shed pounds who haven't been able to. This is a man cell who weighed over 400 pounds. And you would never guess it. And he didn't do it by extreme dieting and so forth.
Yeah. Interesting.
Just a couple words on nutritious food. We take care of what we value. If we value ourselves, we need to be putting whole, healthy foods into our body. I mean, this is not new. It was Hippocrates who said, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food."
So important. Yeah. Thank you, Jan. That's super helpful. And we talked earlier about sleep to maybe add to those strategies. We talked earlier about connection, building those really strong relationships. Spiritual, I know, is also big, or at least in terms of thinking about your purpose and meaning, and what is it that is important for you beyond the widgets that we make every day? Why do you exist? What's the bigger impact that you're having in our world? So lots of great strategies there, Jan. Thank you for that. Let me see if I can pull some of this together as we start to wrap up today. Number one, we've got to start with why. Why do we care about this whole idea of executive wellness? Well, for one, it impacts our performance at work, in life, in all of our relationships. When we are physically, mentally, emotionally well, we can perform at our best. And number two, you talked about like taking a holistic approach to this topic. We're thinking about all aspects. We're thinking about movement. We're thinking about our mental, what was the word you used, Jan? Mental fitness. Yeah, we're thinking about food. We're thinking about sleep. We're thinking about spiritual, social, lifestyle, all of those things. Number three, mental overload comes when we've just got so much that's happening both at work and at home. We should stop thinking about time management, but really be thinking about managing our priorities. I like to think about that as choice management. If we find ourselves down the road, going down the path of burnout, there's two things to do. Number one, pay attention. Pay attention to what your body's telling you. Pay attention to what your emotions are telling you. All progress begins with the truth. What's the truth about your state of being today? And then number two, you can start just by slowing your breathing. It's a great way to pause, to be calm, and to just build some of that self-awareness so you can really pay attention to what's happening with your body. And then some strategies that you talked about. One, self-care is not a luxury. It's a necessity. So there's a mindset shift here. We have to value this. If we want to perform at our best, we have to value being mentally fit, emotionally fit, physically fit. We have to set up the right habits so that we can train our body to not always be in that hypervigilant state. Number three, think about adding meditation, mindfulness, visualization to your day. It's a great way to start your day. Jan, you talked about journaling and gratitude. Number four, self-compassion. And then number five, movement, along with some of the other strategies we talked about today. What did I miss? Anything from the conversation? I know we could probably talk for 4 hours today about the topic.
Well, I always like to bring forth some new or innovative or novel things. And I don't know of anything you missed. I know I forgot to mention I have a card. It's an EMF equilibrium, and it repels the toxic EMFs. And we're on these screens and all of these blue light devices
all the time,
and
right?
it's repelling that, and it's actually preserving some things physiologically. You can also get round circles for the back of your phone. I know I gave these out as Christmas presents this year, but part of preserving ourselves in this toxic world is paying attention to, again, the whole picture, the big picture. And there are things we can do.
Jan, you're amazing. You're doing incredible work with your executives. You're doing great work impacting people's lives. I know you're doing a lot of important work with female leaders in the workplace as well. So thank you for being on the show today. So great to reconnect.
Thanks again. I really appreciate it, Sal. Have a good one.